thank you very much, first of all, for having the CMIA as your project partners and, of course, inviting me here to speak about geopolitics and also to chair the panel. I think the key things that have come out of this conference are about collaboration, and that's not just about international collaboration, but also regionally. There are a lot of competing interests within Africa, and of course, everyone's racing to have the midstream, everyone wants to have the value add. But as we heard from some of the participants, there's quite a few hurdles that have to be addressed before anyone can talk about effective value add. And of course, there are various mechanisms that have been discussed by the ministerial delegations around export bans. And we've heard from industry and investors talking about, well, is there an alternative? So from a very international angle, coming at this as the CMIA, it's great to hear some of these issues discussed, but we definitely now need to focus more on the actions. Actually hearing the UK's ambassador's commitments to the midstream has been quite encouraging. What we've seen so far are just agreements and pieces of paper that look fantastic, but have nothing tangible behind them. So of course, it'll be interesting to see what the numbers that the UK wants to contribute into building an African midstream looks like. But in terms of solid actions, we definitely have a huge skills gap that the UK and other Western nations could really contribute towards upskilling and making sure that Africa has the workforce it needs. And of course, there's still the question of investment. Someone did make a fantastic point that Africa can do this by itself. However, if we look at the Western agenda with the energy transition, if the Western world wants Africa's critical minerals, then absolutely they need to think about how do they invest sustainably in the right projects. And of course, the risk. How do we mitigate that? But we can't generalize. Of course, there are nations within Africa that are incredibly high risk, not just for geopolitical, but local instability. There are artisanal miner issues. There are local issues that need to be addressed. There are definitely certain jurisdictions that are favourites on investors' list. We've seen Namibia be a hot one for quite a while. Of course, we now have the partial export bans to think about. But as favourable policies are implemented, as there is more of a need for Western nations to collaborate with African nations, I think we're going to see some of these policy changes that will implement business practices that work both for Africa and for Western nations. Now, of course, it's a huge challenge. There will be winners, there will be losers, and I think we're going to find out in the next 10 years who wins this race.